Where is CC22? The United States senior national team came out, training camp starting in April, gave us the roster, named all the players, and Caitlin Clark was not one of the players named. Fans are
USA Basketball just dropped its April training camp roster, and fans instantly started searching for one name. Caitlin Clark. She wasn't there. No explanation. No statement. Just missing. At first, it looked like bad news. Panic started building, questions everywhere. But then, the more hardcore basketball fans began connecting the dots, and what they realized completely flipped the narrative. Because here's the twist, not being on that training camp roster might actually be a good sign. So now the real question is, has Caitlin Clark already done enough to lock in her spot on the USA World Cup roster? Or should Indiana Fever fans actually be worried about what this absence really means? What do you think?
That would mean so much to me. See you very soon, Phoenix. The USA women's basketball national team gave its roster. You got Asia, Sabrina, Monique Billings, Michaela Blakes, Cameron Brink, Paige Bueckers, Ray Burrell, Veronica Burton, Afisa Collier, Steph Dolson, Rickea Jackson, Azrae Stevens, Brittany Sykes, Kayla Thornton, Juju Watkins. You're looking at the names listed and...
Let's slow this down for a second, because a lot of people got the initial reaction completely wrong. USA Basketball released its April training camp roster in Phoenix, and the names on that list are stacked. Aya Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Monique Billings, Michaela Blakes, Cameron Brink, Paige Bueckers, Ray Burrell, Veronica Burton, Nafisa Collier, Stephanie Dolson, Rickea Jackson, Isaiah James, Brittany Sykes, Kayla Thornton, and Juju Watkins. That's it. 15 names. But here's where things get interesting. Two major names are missing. Caitlin Clark and Jackie Young. No last-minute addition. No explanation. Just not there. And that's exactly why people started jumping to conclusions.
About the roster for Phoenix, the training camp coming up, and it was no Caitlin Clark. All right, it was no Caitlin, it was no Angel Reese, it was none of them on here. All right, now, I had a few messages from everybody, and they were basically just saying, like, yo, what's going on, right? Why is Caitlin Clark not on this list? Now, honestly, I don't think there's anything to panic over. All right, usually, if I'm not mistaken, they switch up the lineups just in case somebody gets injured at the end of the season, can't necessarily make.
Before anyone starts spiraling, here's what this actually means. Training camps at this point in the calendar are not final roster reveals, they're evaluation sessions. USA Basketball's coaching staff, led by Kara Lawson and Stephanie White, is using this time to assess bubble players, take a closer look at younger talent, and build chemistry with athletes whose spots are still up in the air. So if you're already a lock, showing up to an April camp to run drills with evaluation candidates isn't always the best use of your off-season. Now look at the players who are there. Aya Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Nafisa Collier. Those are established stars. Their spots aren't in question. They're likely in Phoenix for a different reason, to get comfortable with the new coaching setup, build communication with Lawson and White, and establish that connection in a Team USA environment. That's not about proving anything. It's about alignment. Which brings us back to Caitlin Clark. Her absence suggests something else entirely. It points to the idea that the relationship is already there, the trust is already built, and most importantly, the roster spot may already be secured. So instead of flying to Phoenix for evaluation drills, Clark is likely doing something far more valuable for her right now, preparing for the WNBA season with Indiana. And that matters. Because coming off an injury-shortened 2025 season, with championship expectations rising, Clark's priority has to be getting fully ready for Year 3. Every April practice matters. Every rep with Aaliyah Boston matters. Every moment building chemistry with the Fever roster matters. Time spent at a national team camp right now is time not spent building something in Indiana.
Look at this as the end-all be-all. All right, this is, I know it looks a little strange because you have Mo Billings back, Cam back, Paige back, Ray back. You have some players that were at the other training camp, right? And who played in Puerto Rico. You have those players here, but you also have Asia, right? And you have Sabrina, who weren't necessarily in the last ones or the last training camp.
And here's the extra clue that makes everything click. Breanna Stewart isn't on this roster either. Think about that for a second. We're talking about one of the most decorated players in USA basketball history. Multiple-time Olympic gold medalist, WNBA champion, perennial all-star, and one of the most reliable performers the program has ever had. So if Stewart isn't at this April camp, the conclusion isn't that she got cut. That would be ridiculous. The real takeaway is simple. Once you reach a certain level of credibility, this kind of evaluation camp becomes optional. And that puts Caitlin Clark in that same category. That's not hype, that's just how national team roster construction works. The biggest names don't need to prove themselves in April. They show up when it matters. Now, shifting the focus. Paige Bueckers being on this list is where things get interesting. She's coming off an incredible college career, one of the most hyped prospects we've seen in years. The talent is obvious. Her IQ, her creativity, her control of the game, it's all there. But let's be real about where she is right now. She's entering the WNBA for the first time. So the question isn't whether she's taking Caitlin Clark's spot or even competing directly with Sabrina Ionescu or Jackie Young. It's whether this is simply an evaluation opportunity, a chance for the coaching staff to see how her game translates at the next level.
On the brink, no pun intended. Is Paige Bueckers competing with a Sabrina? Is she competing with a Jackie Young for that spot on that national team come FIBA qualifiers, come the actual FIBA World Cup later this year?
Because as of today, it's a stretch to say Bueckers is displacing Clark, Ionescu, or Young. Could she make a roster based on pure talent and long-term planning? Sure. But calling her a direct threat to Clark's spot ignores what Clark has already done internationally. That World Cup qualifier MVP performance? That wasn't hype, that was proof. And somehow, it already feels like old news. Now look at another notable absence, Angel Reese. She's one of the most talked about players in the league, huge commercial presence, elite rebounding, undeniable physical tools. And yet, she's not on this list. Meanwhile, players like Monique Billings and Cameron Brink are there, competing for limited front court spots. That opens up a real question. Is Reese already in, or is she actually on the bubble? That's something to watch. Then there's Juju Watkins. Her inclusion tells a different story. Coming off a serious knee injury, this camp likely serves two purposes. Evaluate where she is right now, and give her a structured environment as she works back to full strength. Whether she's ready for international play this year depends entirely on that recovery. And Ray Burrell keeps showing up again and again. At some point, repeated invitations stop being courtesy, they become a test. Either the coaching staff truly sees her as a future contributor, or she's stuck in that cycle of almost, but not quite. This camp might be the tipping point. One name that didn't get enough attention? Hannah Hidalgo. If you're bringing in guards for evaluation, her absence is noticeable. One of the best defensive guards in recent college basketball, high motor, high ceiling. This would have been a perfect opportunity to evaluate her at this level. Not being here doesn't close the door, but it does raise eyebrows. That frustration is fair, at least from an optics standpoint. But in reality, roster construction isn't happening minute to minute on a whiteboard in Indiana. Front offices handle negotiations. A coach can be involved without physically being there 24/7. Still, fans aren't just reacting to logistics, they're reacting to what it feels like. And right now, they want full focus on winning a title. That's where the bigger picture comes in. Indiana's new training facility is nearing completion, and that matters more than people think. In today's WNBA, players have options. They're choosing environments, development systems, and organizational commitment, not just contracts. Clark has already made Indiana more attractive. Players want to play with her. That's real. But it only works if the system around her makes sense. Stephanie White's vision, how she builds around Clark, how she integrates key pieces, especially if they re-sign Kelsey Mitchell, that's what will define this team. Because if Mitchell comes back, that backcourt becomes a nightmare for defenses. If she doesn't, then everything shifts. But bringing it back full circle, Caitlin Clark not being on this training camp roster was never the red flag people thought it was. Fans saw it, reacted instantly, and then, once the full picture came into focus, the most logical conclusion emerged. She's not missing. She's already in. And instead of proving anything in April, she's preparing for something bigger. A WNBA season where Indiana isn't just trying to compete. They're trying to win everything. So in the end, the absence isn't the story. The preparation behind it is. What's your take?